Have you ever been so afraid and so anxious that you are unable to start a conversation with a stranger? Has fear ever crippled you so much that you feel trapped and overwhelmed? Well, if that's you, and that certainly has been me, I'm gonna share a quick story of how I overcame my anxiety. When I'm anxious, I remind myself of this story and it completely changes how I feel. So I'll set the scene. I'm in the Philippines in a tribe at the start of a outreach, and I'm basically a Christian missionary, but I feel very anxious, very socially insecure. A number of us in our group had to give encouraging messages to the children in the tribe, but then one of the leaders told me that I would be having to give a speech to 100 children at the end of this week. I was extremely scared, very nervous. I felt trapped. I felt like in 3 days I was gonna make a fool of myself. What so many people would do in this situation is they would let the anxiety build up, basically replaying all of these events in their minds, making so many unnecessary waves of anxiety. Everybody would probably be nervous if they have to give a speech, but that doesn't mean that we have to let the anxiety control us. So this is what I did. One evening, we were having a meeting as a group. I was so anxious at this point because I knew that I had to give a speech in 3 days. I couldn't even make eye contact with someone without feeling like crying. I just wanted to be alone. Obviously, I didn't talk in this meeting because I was so anxious, but then suddenly something happened within me. I felt angry at my anxiety, and I was angry that I was putting up with this. I was putting up with my anxiety, this thing that was inside me, because this kind of anxiety is from the devil. It is not what God has put inside me, because God has not put a spirit of fear and timidity inside of us. That is not God, that's the devil. So this is what I did. I decided that I would not rest until this anxiety was gone and I was completely secure in God, and that I didn't have to have other people's approval to feel happy and to feel liked. I went to a small wooden hut in the corner of the tribe. There I took a book with me, and it was called The Pursuit of God. If you haven't read this book, then I highly recommend you read it. I've read a lot of books, and in short, it's the best book that I've ever read beside the Bible. So I'll link it in the description. But basically, I was reading this book and I was trying to muster some kind of passion for God, and I was praying, and for half an hour nothing happened. I almost gave up hope, but then I prayed one final prayer. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like, God, if you're there, please show yourself to me, because I feel alone right now. I felt a buzz in my pocket. It was my phone. So I checked my phone. On it was the verse of the day notification that had literally come on exactly when I had prayed that last prayer. And that isn't even the amazing part. It led me to Matthew chapter 5. This is amazing. This is the chapter that I had literally just been thinking about. In the half an hour where I was praying, I felt like I had given up hope. I was repeating the verses from Matthew chapter 5 in my head over and over, and I was trying to muster some kind of passion for God, as I've said, and I was repeating these verses. I was just thinking about them. And then this verse of the day comes up, which leads me to Matthew chapter 5. There's 1 in 1,000 chance that this would lead me to this chapter, because there's over 1,000 chapters in the Bible. I read Matthew chapter 5 verse 3, which said, God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for Him. And at this point, I was crying. I really was aware of my need for God. I absolutely knew that I needed Him desperately. And then this verse comes up which says, blessed are those who are poor and realize their need for Him. I was crying, and through my tears, I somehow read verse 4, which said, God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And at this point, man, I cannot describe the emotion that I felt. I was completely done. It felt like I had melted through the floor of that hut. I cried for ages. I mean, who wouldn't if they knew that God was with them and they knew his presence? At this point, I felt totally validated by God. I didn't need people to like me to be happy. The big day arrived. I had to talk in front of 100 children. Actually, by this point, it had grown to 150, but I barely noticed because I was so validated in God, and obviously I felt a little bit afraid, but it was monumentally different to how I'd felt 3 days ago. I had to give a talk that would be entertaining for an age range of 4 years old to 19 years old, including some adults, for 1 hour. I took a special story from the Bible, the story of Elijah, when he was on a mountain when there were 50 soldiers at the bottom of the mountain that wanted to kill him. And they told Elijah to come down so they could arrest him and kill him, but Elijah was having none of it. He said, and he prayed, "If I am a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and kill these men." And that's what happened. In my talk, I made them act out this sketch. The 50 soldiers were the audience. I was the narrator, my friend was God, and my other friend would play as Elijah. So basically Elijah would call down fire from heaven, God would pretend to send fire down from heaven, and the audience, that were mainly young children, would pretend to scream and run around and pretend to be burned by the fire. It sounds pretty horrific, but actually they enjoyed it a lot because they're little children and they find pleasure in these things. I just want to reassure you that no fire was actually used in this sketch and no one was hurt. The fact that the talk went well is really beside the point. Even if it had gone terribly, the lesson still stands. Overcoming social anxiety is a doddle if you have God on your side. He has the best plans for you, and he will give you the best things that you need in every season of your life. Now maybe you might be questioning that and say, oh well, my season that I'm going through right now is really rubbish, but he disciplines those he loves to develop endurance, so in the end we will be much happier. When an easier season comes along, it's much easier to have overwhelming joy because we've withstood the elements, we've withstood the season that we were in. God is actually preparing you because he loves you. Sometimes we have to come to God even when we're stressed or we're bored or we're angry. Those are the times when God is able to show off his power the most, because when we are weak, we are strong. When we come to the end of ourselves, that is the beginning of God. I had almost given up hope praying when I prayed that final prayer, and that is when God came through. If we relentlessly pray that our anxiety, our fear, our lust, whatever it is that is holding us back, pray that those things would be destroyed in Jesus' name and that we would be set free, because we hold the keys to freedom. It's prayer. It's knowing our need for God, and that is the key to freedom. Do you know your need for God? If you don't, then I encourage you to pray that God would make you more aware. Pray to be more aware of your need for God, because that is what I pray a lot. It is the key ingredient to a breakthrough. If you're looking for something to watch, then I made a video, how to stop overthinking. I share just a helpful habit that you can get into to focus on the moment and not focus on the past or the future, and getting joy from the day. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be a follower of this channel. I hope that you have an amazing day. Goodbye.